Good morning and welcome to the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners Board Briefing. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. For those presenting today, please turn your mic on when you begin speaking and off when you've completed your remarks. And for all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions.
You can schedule messages to send later in the Messages app.
So that's what we can do with this. Okay. I do want to say, even though I don't see him in the room, that today is Chris Neal's one-year anniversary at Multnomah County. So hopefully he'll come in here so we can say congratulations to him. But I did want to just say thank you. You know, he has provided his perspective and impact on all of the important work we do, and he really brings a lot of joy and energy to the office every day. So I just wanted to acknowledge this important day for him. With that, we will go to our first board briefing. Oh, yay! Chris, you just missed it, but it was an announcement that today is your one-year anniversary at the county. Yes, it has only been 1 year. I'm sure it feels like 100, but but just wanted to say thank you so much for the way that you've approached this work and embraced the work that we do. So thank you. All right. Now moving on to our first board briefing item. We do have 3 today, so we're going to move quickly through these, but want to make sure that we do have time for discussions on all 3 items today. The first one is a pretrial update, and so I would invite our presenters for the pretrial update down to the dais. This is an informational briefing that is going to provide an update to the board on the work from the pretrial subcommittee of the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council that have been engaged in this work for well over a year. There's also a budget note that was brought forward with our FY26 budget, sponsored by Commissioners Moyer and Brim Edwards, that was passed last year. So I will turn that over to Commissioner Moyer or Commissioner Brim Edwards.
I'll go first.
Go ahead, Commissioner. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Chair. So this is a topic that maybe if you're watching just part of the community, it's like, what is pretrial? So a little bit of framing here. Today's briefing came to us as a result of a pretrial services budget note that Commissioner and I co-sponsored last October, and that was unanimously approved by the Commission. This budget note was prompted by the Sheriff's proposal during the fiscal year 2026 state budget rebalance to end the Sheriff's Office closed street monitoring program amidst budget cuts and preservation of statutorily required service, including jails. While closed street supervision has remained funded through this fiscal year, this has been a critical inflection point and opportunity for us to review, assess, and plan for the future of our pretrial system. So what is pretrial and who are we talking about? A pretrial is the part of the justice system between arrest where a person is charged with a crime and when a case is finished. During this time, everyone charged with the crime is presumed innocent, a very important thing to remember. Also during this pretrial time, people are assessed for risk currently by the county's Department of Community Justice based on 2 main factors: the likelihood of committing a new crime while on release and the likelihood of missing court dates. Based on these risk factors and the presiding judge's order, decisions by circuit court judges are made to release people on their own recognizance or release people to supervision or monitoring or hold people in jail pretrial. In Multnomah County, there's currently 2 monitoring programs, both of which have been requested by either the Sheriff or the Department of Community Justice to be cut in the fiscal year 2027 budget. That's pretrial service program through the Department of Community Justice and also closed street supervision through the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. So what are we trying to achieve here? The pretrial service budget note was intended to bring forward critical information, and we're going to hear some of that this morning, that needs to lead to action by the county and its pretrial system partners to achieve, from my perspective, a pretrial system that is just, supports community safety, increases court appearance rates, and is cost effective. I know this has primarily been driven by cost in the budget, but I think keeping all of these pillars and in consideration, so it's not just cost and the budget, but the other objectives we need from a pretrial system. I want to just close the sort of intro by thanking an appreciation for the work from the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council and the pretrial subcommittee members who have met many times and often since the end of October of last year to bring forward recommended improvements to the pretrial system. I really appreciate the service. And also want to acknowledge that today, while we don't have one clear recommendation, I think this is an opportunity for us to get into much deeper into the issues, to understand impacts, the budgets, where cost savings might be, but how we also achieve a just system that also keeps as a priority community safety at the forefront as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Moyer.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for the work that has been put in to get to today. I think the budget note was a reflection from the commission on wanting everyone's input and insight on how we move forward within a significant budget restraint, thinking about what can be achieved with potentially, we have not seen the chair's budget, nor have we gone through our budget process, but a very real potential of every program and department needing to make reductions. It is my hope that this is not the conclusion of the conversation, largely because we do not seem to have arrived on a consensus product, but also in a strong belief that for a pretrial program to be successful, all parties need to have buy-in as well as it fit into the work of that department or organization. So I really do appreciate everything that's been put in to getting to where we are. I'm hoping that this briefing gives the commission a chance to get questions answered, maybe nudge some additional movement if possible, but also for us to understand more and hopefully engage more in this conversation so that wherever we land in a budget process, we are as close to a unified strategy as we can get. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, and with that, I am happy to turn things over to Sarah Mullen, our Executive Director of the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council. Good morning, Sarah.
Great. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Sarah Mullen, and I am the Executive Director of the Multnomah County Local Public Safety Coordinating Council. I am going to try and keep my remarks fairly brief today, as we have 6 members of the pretrial subcommittee who will be speaking after me. So I am here today to provide an overview of the final report requested as a response to the pretrial services budget note. My role here today is to really speak to the collaborative work that was done in the pretrial subcommittee, to provide an overview of the resulting options, and to share what we know about enhanced practice when it comes to pretrial programs. Over the course of the past couple months, and really in conversations over the past couple years, the pretrial subcommittee has discussed a number of options to include in the report. These have been distilled down into the 2 options that were included in the final report presented to you all on March 1st. You'll notice that the 2 options presented have many similarities, and this is really due to our collaborative learning together over the past few years, and more intensively the collaborative work that we did together over the past few months, and our overall pretrial system goals. A primary shared goal that we have is to increase successful court appearance, and whatever the court decides has the potential to improve upon our current system and really move us toward that objective, whether it's one of the 2 options that we presented or a 3rd option based on funding availability and board priorities. Improving court appearance is crucial because when people attend court, cases move to resolution faster. And this is essential for bringing a faster sense of justice to victims and to the community. Evidence suggests that supportive pretrial services are an effective way to improve court attendance and achieve these better outcomes. Notably, in both options, the county retains all or some portion of the monitoring function. So another critical decision that the board will need to make in addition to funding availability is whether the county could or should retain any monitoring function. And I think if the county decides that they'd like to retain some monitoring function, there's two incredibly solid ideas here. If the county decides to move in a different direction, the building blocks exist within the report and the collaborative work that's been done to think about a third alternative option that could be developed collaboratively. Next slide. All right, so today I'm going to talk just briefly about the current state of monitoring. Commissioner Brim-Edwards already gave a nice overview of how pretrial works, so I won't dive too deeply into that. I'll talk about the practices that we know could improve our court appearance rates. I'll talk about the two delivery options that are present in the report, and then just some key considerations, and then I'll turn it over to our two panels. Next slide. All right, so as the commissioner mentioned, we currently use the public safety assessment to recommend a monitoring level based on assessed risk of non-appearance in court or risk to commit a new offense while on pretrial release. The judges make the final decision and refer individuals to one of two monitoring agencies. We currently have a bifurcated system with DCJ's pretrial service taking those who are assessed or ordered to a lower level of supervision, and the Sheriff's Office Close Street taking those assessed at a higher risk or who are referred to a higher level of supervision. This is primarily, our monitoring is primarily done through phone check-ins. Sometimes people leave messages on answering machines, and the frequency of those phone check-ins just depends on the monitoring level. We also have electronic monitoring with both agencies, both through GPS and SCRAM, which is a continuous alcohol monitoring. And we have a system that moves people between levels of monitoring based on their compliance. So if somebody is in compliance with their condition, they're able to move down in their monitoring level. We do not currently have a process to move somebody completely off of monitoring to ROR. Just some challenges that we've previously highlighted in our other board presentations. We have a significant data sharing challenge. We have a really outdated case management system, which makes it incredibly hard for our programs to both track and share data and to report on outcomes. There are inconsistencies between our two programs because we have a bifurcated system and the programs have different policies and different procedures, which means that individuals have a different experience depending on which monitoring agency they're referred to. We have high caseloads. So we're seeing a high number of people who are referred to our highest levels of monitoring, and that means that we have caseloads that are unmanageable. And we also lack consistent supportive services, which we have known through our education that could increase court appearance. Next slide. So here are some practices that we could use to improve our system. We are seeing this as a real opportunity to think about how we could potentially do things differently to get better results. And I think that, a lot of this is related to supportive services because we've seen in the research around failures to appear that many failures to appear are not willful. They're due to things like lack of transportation, lack of childcare, lack of stable housing, not wanting to leave belongings unattended. And so really thinking about how we can change the way we support people so that they can better appear in court. And that's what a number of these practices are. And these are really coming out of what we learned from site visits, from presentations from other jurisdictions, from the Justice System Partner Report, and from the people in the room who each have roles within the pretrial system. So the first is really creating a unified system. And this has been a theme every time somebody in the past has tried to reform Multnomah County's pretrial system. We saw it in a report that came out 15 years ago to really try and consolidate efforts under one pretrial system. Creating behavioral messaging for court reminders. This is a really well-researched and effective way to get people to court. So messaging that includes things like asking if people have transportation, if they know where the court building is. Having peer navigators, so people with lived experience who could really support individuals to get to court and understand the complex system. Better coordination with law enforcement. This was a result of having Portland Police Bureau at the table in our pretrial subcommittee meetings, talking about how we could create a more intentional connection and relationship with our law enforcement partners to ensure that if there is a victim or public safety risk and somebody is violating their conditions of release, there could be more swift response. Victim and survivor support, we have folks here who are going to talk about that more later, but really intentionally including supports for victims and survivors at this particular point. Warm handoffs, ensuring that people actually get to their pretrial appointments. We see a number of people in our system right now who are missing their initial intake. So thinking about how do we as a system bridge the gap between that referral to pretrial and the actual intake so that people maintain compliance and again, show up at court to have their cases resolved. And then lastly, material supports to increase court appearance, cell phones, transportation, access to housing, all of those things that we know that can help people in the community. Next slide. All right, there's a couple statewide changes and opportunities as well that we can benefit from. So the state has been working over the past couple years to really standardize pretrial across all of the counties in Oregon. As part of this work to improve the system, they've also rolled out or are in the process of rolling out two opportunities that we can take advantage of. So the first is the Oregon Pretrial Assessment Tool, and this is a tool that is a risk assessment tool, so assessing the risk of failure to appear in new criminal activity, as well as I think it has a flag to assess kind of new person crimes, but I'm not sure. We'd have to ask Chris Campbell, who worked on developing the tool. This was developed specifically using Oregon data, so it's really more tailored to our kind of state. It was validated statewide. It has not yet been validated in Multnomah County, although I imagine as we adopt it, we would validate it post-use, just as we have done with the public safety assessment. My understanding is that it will be available for use in spring 2026, so it's starting to be rolled out now to jurisdictions, and that it'll be automated. So similar to the PSA, it'll be something where it can pull criminal history from other data systems, and the tool can run automatically, which allows for us to be able to assess everybody who comes into our system. The second piece is the Oregon Judicial Department's e-supervision case management system, and I've been hearing about this system from our deputy trial court administrator for a few years now. It is an existing case management system that's currently used by other jurisdictions. He has confirmed that both state employees at the court as well as county employees would be able to use this system, so any future pretrial services option could use this e-supervision case management system. This has the potential to address some of our data sharing challenges. It may require some additional costs for integrations with other data systems. It does have an existing integration with the Swiss system, which the sheriff's office uses. So we just have to vet the system the way that the county vets all kind of data systems to ensure that it does actually, in fact, meet our needs for both data reporting and data sharing. Next slide. All right, so moving on to our two options. So the group discussed a number of different options to get to a place where we were able to sort of distill them into these two different options. And this was done through conversations and meetings, but also a lot of back and forth kind of draft feedback. LPSC staff also met with each individual participant of the pretrial subcommittee to gain specific feedback on various parts, incorporating that all into the report. So this proposal has pretrial consolidated under one county department. It has the county taking basically all of the pretrial monitoring and service responsibility to create a pretrial supportive services program. This serves 750 individuals, which is close to the number of folks that we are serving now. However, this could be scaled up or scaled down. If there is more close adherence to the risk assessment tool and the recommended monitoring levels, I think this could be scaled down, which would reduce the cost overall of this particular option. This option relies on a comprehensive intake to really determine what individuals' needs are and then refer them to level of service based on needs. And what this does is really allow staff to focus on individuals who have extensive unmet needs and who consistently and persistently miss court. So really dedicating resources to those who are at the highest risk of court non-appearance. It provides warm handoffs, peer navigators, and victim advocates. The real goal of the warm handoff, as I mentioned before, is to ensure that the individual feels supported and respected and fully informed of all of the conditions of their release so that we can encourage successful engagement with pretrial services. Keeping this in a county department allows for direct connection to county services and potential for case conferencing with other county case managers, potentially at a later point, to really think about how to get somebody reconnected or connected to the existing county services that they may have already accessed. And then it also includes limited enhanced monitoring. And this came out of some feedback and conversations with our representatives from the district attorney's office, who were concerned that there were certain case types that may need more traditional sort of surveillance-based monitoring in the form of phone check-ins, more GPS monitoring, and just more of a response in the community based on their criminal history or case, the facts of the case. So working with the DA's office, they came up with an initial list of charges that were included in the report. That's not comprehensive, but it's just an example to kind of get us started on who could be eligible for enhanced monitoring, really thinking about using that as a limited resource for those who may otherwise be held in custody or where there may be a significant victim safety concern. I do want to note that the costs for this option do not include the cost for the DCJ Recognizance and Hearings Unit, which is separate from this process. The Recog and Hearings Unit provides a critical 24/7 function to DCJ, and while they do provide some pretrial functions on behalf of the court, which include running the public safety assessment and applying the pretrial release order, their primary role after hours and on the weekends is to support DCJ POs and their goals of connecting DCJ clients in custody to housing and providing connectivity to law enforcement, to BOAC, and to the sheriff's office after hours. So that cost is not included here. The estimated annual cost is just the cost of the monitoring. And that's important because the cost between option 1 and option 2 cannot quite be compared side to side because they really include very different things. So I wanted to make that clear here. Next slide. All right, so the next option is the court's proposed restructure. So court-led pretrial monitoring has been discussed throughout the report development and agreed on early in the subcommittee and in our pretrial retreat as a potential delivery method, which would align with the statewide approach. While there's been many iterations of a court-led pretrial program that were presented in the report, the final version included as option 2 here was the final iteration proposed by the court shortly before the report was delivered. I do want to appreciate that this option differs from those that were previously discussed by the group, as the court was able to creatively identify positions that exist within the court that could actually be reallocated and restructured to support the monitoring that they're interested in seeing. This option, importantly, proposes the elimination of the DCJ Recognizance and Hearings Unit and restructures the pre-adjudication, all the pre-adjudication tasks, both completed by the county and the court. In this option, the court would expand their release assistance officers' operations to 24/7, and they would assume some of the functions of the Recog unit, including assessment and application of the presiding judge's pretrial release order. In addition to doing that, the release assistance officers would provide monitoring for those who are assessed at low risk, which would include both automated and non-automated phone check-ins, providing material supports that were procured and managed by the county, and then offering some warm handoffs. The county would then provide the enhanced monitoring, as I described in the previous option, which would be available to the high-risk and high-need population, about 450 people, which would include the county managing electronic monitoring, providing the material supports, and also employing the peer navigators. Judge Greenlick and Barb Mercier are here, and they'll speak after me, so I'll let them provide additional details about this option when they come up. Next slide. All right. My final slide is really just some key considerations that I want to highlight for you all as you are moving forward and thinking about how to make a decision on this and what the next steps are. And so I want to be clear that it's important to think about dedicating some funding for a thoughtful transition period. There are hundreds of individuals who are currently on pretrial monitoring with both DCJ and MCSO. And it's really important that if our monitoring system changes, that they understand what those changes mean for their individual circumstances and their cases. It's important that the victims understand, and it is important that our system partners are involved in a thoughtful transition. Additionally, it's important to give some time for whatever comes into this space to be able to stand up and develop their program and their procedures. The next part, I think, is equally as important, which is really ensuring that there's equitable program design and implementation, whether it's using the county's equity empowerment lens as a starting place, and then really thinking about how to intentionally build equity into this process, recognizing that it's often been absent from the criminal legal system. We also want to be clear that these changes need to be measured, and we need to report out to both you as the board, but also to our partners and to the community on how they're working. I wanted to also reflect on a comment that Commissioner Jones-Dixon made at a previous briefing, which was really about how to expand the table in this group. And so thinking about moving something towards implementation, who else should be at the table? Should we include other county departments who are not legal system players? Can we include more community voice, recognizing that we have 20 trained Justice Fellows who are available to participate in projects? And who else needs to be present to ensure that we create a pretrial program that meets everyone's needs? I think training is incredibly important, making sure that there's training on a new tool, new pretrial monitoring, and then creating an intentional pathway to connect and reconnect with existing county services. Lastly, I just want to close with, without a functioning pretrial option, judges may more frequently use security, which is cash bail, to hold individuals in custody. I have heard this repeatedly in our pretrial meetings, and we know that cash bail contributes to systemic inequity and unfairly impacts people who cannot afford to pay to be released. As we also have seen, as noted in the recent grand jury report, jail is not well suited to address the needs of individuals. And we know from years of research that even a few days in pretrial detention is harmful. So I want to end there, but also encourage you all to read the final 10 pages of the report, which includes testimonials from social workers, from their clients who have experienced the pretrial system firsthand, to really understand the impact of our pretrial system and the importance of support. I am happy to answer any questions, and then want to make sure there's time for the 6 additional members of the pretrial subcommittee to come up and speak.
All right, thanks, Sarah. And just in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and have folks come up, and then we'll do questions at the end.
Okay.
So really want to invite folks up here. Judge Greenlick and Barbara Marcial. You're welcome to come up. We can also have the district attorney come up. All right, Judge Greenlick, I will turn it over to you. Good morning, and thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning, Chair Vega Peterson, and good morning, Commissioners. Again, my name is Judge Michael Greenlick, and I am the Chief Criminal Judge for our courthouse. And with me is Barb Marcial, our trial court administrator. I'm happy to, I'd like to address mostly option 2, because that's the option the court put forward. When we saw the options that were initially being developed by the LPSC pretrial subcommittee, we had concerns, because they were coming in at a price tag that roughly was equal to what the current cost of pretrial is, around $6 million. And we were aware that we had a significant budget constraint that you folks are wrestling with this year. And we were afraid from the conversations we were having with LPSC leadership that if we just put forth the options, there were other options besides option 1 at one point we were considering submitting to the board, but all of those options were similar, that if we put those forward and there needed to be a constraint and there needed to be a cut of the program, what would be cut is the monitoring program, because the other parts of pretrial are statutorily required. And so Ms. Marcial started thinking about this a little bit, and we started thinking about doing a reorganization, and we think we came up with something that would solve many of the problems of our pretrial system, but also would have a significantly reduced price tag. I want to talk about the price tag here for just a second, because Ms. Mullen just indicated that the cost of monitoring for the current system, option 1 and option 2, were roughly the same, $3.7 million for the current system, $3.7 million for option 1, and $3.4 million for option 2. But what is being left out is the pretrial system is not just the monitoring part of it. It also includes DCJ's RECOG unit. They perform a critical function, an important part of our pretrial system overall. And when you add that cost in, the current pretrial system overall is about $6 million, and option 1 would come in at $6 million because the RECOG unit would be included with option 1. With option 2, we would largely be taking over the court, when I say we, would largely be taking over the functions of the RECOG unit. And those functions are important, and from my understanding, our conversations with Denise Pena and leadership at DCJ, most of the actual work, most of the hours spent in the RECOG unit is doing pretrial functions. So for every single defendant that's brought into custody, they have to administer the presiding release order, which is an order required by statute where we determine which folks are eligible to be released immediately before they even see a judge. So that has to be done with every single person. And they also administer the PSA, which is our risk score, our risk assessment. And they also take care of, I think, the paperwork and the actual getting people released from custody. And so we have a lot of people coming in 24/7, a lot of people coming in the middle of the night, and those RECOG officers for the RECOG unit work on those things. Now that would be taken over with option 2. The court release assistant officers would be doing that function. And we explain this in a fair amount of detail in in sets of materials we provided. I think they're on your desks right now, but we also attach them to the agenda or ask that they be attached. And we explain sort of what our release assistant officers would be doing. And what we appreciate about option 2 is instead of having these various systems having touch points with the defendants as they're coming through the system, it would be one release assistance officer. So they would administer our risks test, and we're hoping that's going to be the Oregon pretrial assessment tool. They would be administering the presiding release order. They could do a needs assessment. They could handle all of it, and they wouldn't have to worry about the problems of getting people transported to a certain place to have access with them. They could do all of this, and they could 24/7 coordinate the warm handoff that we will have in place at some point. Now we estimated, and these were figures that based off of the Lipsick figures when they were researching how much all these positions cost, we estimated that the cost of the county would be $3.4 million, which would be a significant savings. Now, since that time we made that estimation, we've learned that the RECOG unit also does one other function. Ms. Mullen described it as the primary function. It might be considered primary in terms of like its importance, perhaps, because it coordinates between police officers and POs. But it's certainly not primary in terms of how much time the officers are spending serving that function. Basically, the way I understand it is if a police officer has contact with somebody who's on probation, so somebody other than in the pretrial system, or on post-prison supervision, being released from prison, then they have the ability, they call the RECOG unit officer, who is a tech, not actually a PO, and that person contacts a probation officer and to determine whether a hold should be placed on that person, because POs have authority to place holds on people so they won't be released otherwise. And so we understand that could happen not once in a night. It might happen one time or two times or several times. But it is something that is, in terms of time, a very small percentage of what's spent. Now, it seems to me that that it's possible the court could take on part of that, the release assistant officers. But even if that's not the case, it seems to me that DCJ could be reorganized in a way where that small part of the function could be performed. And we had to do this as judges at one point. We had to all of a sudden do search warrants in the middle of the night. And so we did that with no fiscal impact at all, except for the cost of an iPad, basically. We worked out a system where judges just rotated and they were on duty, and sometimes when I'm on duty, 2 weeks out of the year, I get called 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night, and I just deal with it. And we believe that there would be a way for DCJ to do this, and we could realize significant savings, close to $2 or $2.5 million, if we could then incorporate the rest of the RECOG unit into the court and have the RAOs do that. So if we went with option 2, and we're fine with option 1 if it's funded, because courts would have, the option when they're making release decisions of releasing people on monitoring or enhanced monitoring. But what we're concerned about is that won't be affordable with option 1. And that's why we're asking you to consider option 2, because I think that would be a significant cut in the overall cost of the pretrial system, and it would solve many of the problems that we're realizing right now. The data sharing problem would be largely solved. The warm handoffs 24/7, not just during work days, would be largely solved. The peer navigator, there would be the possibility of having peer navigators involved. With the e-supervision program, we would be able to do things like really keep track of the supervision, make adjustments as we go, understand what's working and not working, and do the behavioral messaging. That's part of the e-supervision program as well. So we think we would solve a lot of the problems, and through the court reorganizing, and despite our own budget issues and the lack of adequate staffing in our court system, we think we could reorganize things in a way that would bring great savings to the county and create a system that we could be proud of. Now, it is true that that security, holding somebody on security creates equity problems. We know that, but that's the law in Oregon. It's the law in Oregon. And when a judge is interacting with somebody at an arraignment, we have to make a decision first. Considering primary and secondary release criteria, would that person be suitable for recognizance release? And a lot of folks are released on recognizance release. People who don't have significant criminal histories, that aren't committing serious crimes, and don't have histories of failing to appear, they're all released on recognizance release, oftentimes before they even see a judge. Then we have to, if we determine they're not appropriate for that, based on the evidence and the facts and the input from the parties, we have to decide whether conditional release would be appropriate in terms of community safety and assuring somebody's going to come to court. And the prime form of conditional release is monitoring. We can put other conditions on people's release, like don't leave the state of Oregon and that sort of thing, but in order to have some assurance that we're mitigating the risks that we're seeing, it's conditional release. And if conditional release is not appropriate or does not exist in any meaningful form, then we're required by law to set security. And so that's the system we have. And that's what judges will need to do. And that's why we are very concerned that when judges are making those really hard decisions about the people that are posing or appear to pose a risk to the community or a risk of failing to appear, we're concerned that there will be, in many more situations, that will be the only option that's available, because RECOG release would not be appropriate.
All right, thank you, Judge Greenlick. I'm going to, I know we have had the letters from you and some of this, and this is really helpful information. I do want to make sure that we have time to hear from everyone today. So if you have any other items you want to share, please go ahead. And,
no, Chair, I was concluding my remarks.
Oh, excellent.
It was good timing.
Great, okay, perfect timing then. Barb, are you have things to share?
I will just introduce myself, Chair. Barbara Marcial. I'm the trial court administrator for the court. Thank you for having us here today. And I am just here as a supportive resource for Judge Greenlick and for you all, so happy to answer any questions that come up.
Thank you for making the time to be here. Dave Vasquez, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Vega-Peterson, members of the commission, for having me here. My name is Nathan Vasquez. I'm the district attorney for Multnomah County. I'm here to speak about our two pretrial option proposals that are here before the board and to provide my perspective on these proposals, and particularly speak out why I believe the Oregon Judicial Department's proposal is the most responsible, fiscally sound, and the safest path for Multnomah County's pretrial system. To be direct, option 2, the OJD's proposal, saves the county money, real money, and provides the best supervision system. Option 2 is not only safer, it's cheaper because it shares the cost between the county and the state. It saves the county approximately $2.5 million annually compared to our current system, and almost the same amount compared to the option 1. The county cost is about $3.42 million, not the $5.9 million previously reported. So under option 1, it is a lot cheaper. The earlier figure mistakenly charged the county for state-funded court positions that we do not pay for. So I want to clear up some of those things that have been said. This is a rare moment in government where budgeting where we are offered a safer option that also costs significantly less. Option 2 also offloads $2.4 million in costs to the court, which means fewer county dollars are required to deliver a whole system solution. Here's my concern. Option 1 will continue a revolving door that leaves us less safe and cost us more money. It will stretch our system by under-resourcing parts that actually protect the community. We will be guaranteed more warrants, more failures to appear, more law enforcement contacts, and ultimately more churn through our jail through emergency population releases. The reason is simple. Our pretrial system only works when all parts work together. So let's start with option 1. It just simply provides less. Option 1 provides fewer monitoring staff. There's 6 full-time employees instead of the 9 under option 2, even as it expects the county to shoulder nearly all of the operational burden. That's a structure that is mismatched, and it places direct pressure on release decisions. What we're going to have is a higher burden on those release officers, in other words, a higher caseload. And as a menu of all the carte options, my expectation is that even those 6 FTE will be deprioritized in our future budget cycles. As we know, we're facing huge budget pressures, and these are the types of things that are lost in those. I want to strongly echo Judge Greenlick's comments. When judges don't have a reliable, adequately staffed monitoring system, when they have to choose between setting security on defendants who could have been released with adequate monitoring or releasing individuals who pose a real risk without significant guardrails, what's going to happen is, sadly, more people are going to be held that could have otherwise been released. I really am here to say that option 2 gives us the best option to see more individuals safely released into the community. Because the court will not release high-risk individuals without confidence in a monitoring system. It has been clearly expressed that the most confidence here today is in option 2. Lacking that confidence, people will sit in custody, or worse, they'll be matrix released without supervision. That is the real revolving door. What we have before us, though, with option 2 is something that directly strengthens public safety. Option 2 does what option 1 does not. It builds a credible 24/7 system. That's a key difference between the two. That increases the appearance rate and protects the community. There are other key differences. Yes, the 24/7 release officer presence for booking that will immediately do interviews, victim contact, triage, and warm handoffs, including other hours that option 1 does not. But also the validated ODAP risk tool applied consistently to predict the failures to appear, new arrest warrants, and person crimes. But really what we're talking about, one of the key differences, focused monitoring on cases that involve domestic violence, person felonies, restraining order violations, repeat DUI and sex offender cases. These are some key issues that we're currently underserving in our community. And it's one that I've heard at times, well, why doesn't the DA do more of the kind of the forced holds under our system and what we call preventative detention? Unfortunately, those are, under the law, only available for a very small slice of cases. It leaves a wide range of cases out there that are of real risk and danger to our community. If we're serious about safety, we must resource the system in a way that matches the reality of who we release and the expectations we place in the court. Right now, our system is fragmented across the county and the court, and we have these silos. Option 2 fixes that. It eliminates the duplication in risk assessments, interviews, victim contact, and pretrial work, moving all of that to a single 24/7 unit, consolidating to one case management platform, the ESUP, instead of a mismatch and often disconnected systems. This leads to fewer systems, fewer handoffs, fewer opportunities for failure, and more importantly, fewer people coordinating the same individual. A clear efficiency win. Addressing these challenges honestly, we should acknowledge that this transition, it's going to take time. It's going to take 6 to 12 months. And that some DCJ services cannot be fully absorbed into this new unit. There will be some DCJ reorganization, and some savings will be slightly reduced as a result of that. We recognize that. But the requirement of having a PO on call to handle after-hours calls from police will be substantially less than $2.4 million. As we heard Judge Greenlick say, the court was able to absorb that when they went to 24/7 on-call status. My office, we have the same warrant phone requirement. We do the same thing. We spread out the work. We're able to manage that without an on-call. In closing, what I'd like to say is that we do want a pretrial system that helps close that revolving door and supports individuals in an equitable manner in meeting court obligations and saves the county millions. Is that what we want? Or do we want a system that replicates the problems we already have, but with less monitoring, higher cost, and a greater risk to the public? For both those individuals charged with crimes and the community, option 1 leaves us with that revolving door, while option 2 builds out a responsible, reliable, forward-looking system that protects both the defendant's rights and public safety. And those are the keys that we're looking to get at. Thank you.
Thank you all so very much. Appreciate this. And then we'll have some questions at the end. So at this point, I would like to invite the next panel up, Rhea Dumont, Nicole Moore, and Grant Hardley. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I am Nichelle Moore. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the manager of Victim and Survivor Services at Department of Community Justice.
And my name is Rhea Dumont. I use she, her pronouns, and I manage the Domestic and Sexual Violence Coordination Office with the Department of County Human Services. Next slide, please. We're here to talk about the importance of embedding victim and survivor services in the pretrial program. Pretrial is one of the earliest and most critical moments for survivor and community safety, and we know earlier interventions are more effective. Decisions made at this stage, who's released, under what conditions, and how those conditions are monitored, have immediate and real impacts on victim and survivor safety. Our system was not designed with survivors at the center of these decisions. If we build a new program that focuses solely on monitoring the person who caused harm without investing in survivor navigation, safety planning, and system coordination, we're repeating the same gaps that we've identified for decades. We understand and support the role of pretrial and efforts to reduce reliance on jail. Jail does not guarantee safety. Others in an accused person's network can still impact a survivor's safety. And even when that's not a factor, incarceration is a temporary response that does not ensure long-term safety or address survivor needs. In some cases, it can also increase the risk of reoffense or retaliation.
And national data consistently shows that a significant portion of people who have experienced crime, including violent crime, do not report to law enforcement. And according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics National Crime Victimization Survey, which we've included a link to on the last page of these slides, roughly half of violent victimizations go unreported. And that is likely an undercount, as it does not capture people who never engage with systems at all. It reflects what we already know, that many survivors do not believe that the criminal legal system will provide safety, healing, or meet their needs. And when survivors do report, but the response results in harm continuing or escalating, that trust is further eroded, and it makes them less likely to participate in prosecution or report any future violence that occurs, even from the same person. If we are going to redesign any part of our current criminal legal system, which has well-documented gaps in addressing survivor safety, it should be done with a focus on maximizing options for survivors, ensuring that their voices are meaningfully included in decision-making, and building structures that uphold their rights in practice, not just as an afterthought. If we do not design for survivor safety and make it the focus of someone's job, then it will not be a priority. The gap is not whether or not we recognize risk, it's whether we are responding to it in a way that actually increases safety. You can go ahead and switch to slide 3.
This gap is especially critical for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, sex trafficking, and gang-related violence, and these forms of harm often intersect. Survivors experiencing these types of violence are navigating coercion, control, retaliation, and ongoing risk. These are not one-time incidents. They're pattern forms of harm, and they're often intended to isolate survivors and limit their access to resources. Survivors are also more likely to be doubted or blamed, which further increases risk. In many of these cases, risk is not about whether someone is likely to show up to court or get arrested for a new crime. It's about how power, control, and intimidation will continue for this survivor over time, and it's often invisible to standard monitoring tools. When those dynamics are not understood, we don't just miss risk, we can make decisions that increase harm. These cases carry some of the highest safety risks in our system for survivors and for the broader community. Next slide, please.
We see this not only in experience, it's reflected in our local data. Here in Multnomah County, even when the tool recommends release, domestic violence cases are routinely treated as higher risk in practice. Nearly 43% of cases where release was recommended but overridden involved domestic violence. And when a domestic violence case was recommended for release, it was overridden 99% of the time. That's from a DV Overrides Multnomah County document, which we've also linked to on the last slide. So the system is already signaling that these cases carry risk that isn't fully captured by standard tools. Most pretrial risk assessment tools are not designed for domestic violence or other forms of ongoing and coercive harm. They do not account for coercive control, survivors' behavior when they are under threat, or patterns of ongoing harm. And you can read more about that in the position statement on pretrial that's from the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, which we've also linked to on the last slide. Pretrial systems are often built to assess court appearance and rearrest, not to understand the lived dynamics of harm and the ongoing threat to survivors.
So we're essentially asking systems to interpret complex, high-risk situations using tools that were never built for that purpose. And without specialized survivor-informed capacity built inside the pretrial agency, those risks are often misunderstood or missed entirely. And that's not a failure of individual staff. It's a limitation of the tools and the structures that we're asking staff to rely on. We've got decades of learning that shows us something very consistent. When systems are not intentionally designed to center survivors, they're unintentionally designed to leave them out. Survivors are left to interpret release conditions, determine risk, guess how electronic monitoring works, and navigate systems that were not built with them in mind. We also know, as we mentioned, that survivors don't rely on the criminal legal system alone for safety. They require multiple pathways, including advocacy, safety planning, housing, system and resource navigation, especially at early decision points like pretrial. When those supports are not built into the system, we're not neutral. We're designing predictable gaps in safety. Next slide, please.
So the recommendation is to include 2 FTE that are dedicated to victim and survivor navigation within the pretrial program, whatever agency it's decided that that program will be within. This recommendation ensures that survivor safety is not an afterthought, but is a core function of the pretrial program. These roles are not only direct service providers, they also act as subject matter experts who shape how the entire program understands and responds to risk. They provide ongoing training, real-time consultation, and help ensure that decisions about monitoring, noncompliance, and intervention are grounded in the realities of domestic violence, sexual violence, trafficking, and other forms of complex harm. This approach is also consistent with national guidance, which emphasizes that pretrial decisions in domestic violence cases require more than release conditions alone. They require survivor engagement, support, and access to resources to be effective. It's important to acknowledge that the District Attorney's Victim Assistance Program is a critical part of our system. They provide essential support and information within the prosecution and court process. The function of these proposed advocate positions are different. These positions should exist within the pretrial program itself to inform that particular agency's monitoring decisions and support real-time safety considerations. These advocates can also support survivor-centered risk assessments, such as lethality assessments.
Without that internal capacity, we're relying on individual staff to stretch beyond their roles, and on external agencies to carry functions without access to the real-time information needed and required for them to do them effectively. These functions must be embedded within the pretrial program to work as intended. This is also an equity issue. We know that communities of color are disproportionately negatively impacted by the criminal justice system, and survivors of color face additional barriers to safety and access. Designing a system without staff whose job it is to pay attention to those dynamics will continue to reproduce those disparities. We're at a critical design moment. The decisions made now will shape how the system functions for years. We're not being asked to imagine what might happen because we already know. A system without survivor-focused capacity will produce predictable gaps in safety. This isn't a trade-off, it's what makes the system effective. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Grant.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Grant Hartley. I'm the Multnomah County Director for Metropolitan Public Defenders. I've been involved in the pretrial reforms here in Multnomah County really since before I became director back in 2021, when the MacArthur Foundation helped to convene a table to educate the county on issues with our current pretrial program, as well as best practices around the nation that we could look at implementing. And you know, as a group, we received countless presentations about best practices, research, about what other programs we're doing. And I also have my experience as a public defender, working directly with the population that we are talking about monitoring in the community as they have a case pending. And so I'm also relying on my own personal experience as well as what I've heard from the attorneys that work in my office around what motivates our clients to engage with the system, what gets our clients to court, what motivates them to make change in their life. And so I'm not going to recommend one of the options, option one or option two. I think both have value. I think both have drawbacks. Instead, I want to focus my testimony sort of on the three things that I think are most important for our pretrial system, as well as calling out some of the concerns that I have with both of the options. Those three things are a unified system, approachable, relationship-driven program, and a focus on service connections. First, the unified system. Since I started, frankly, in the public defender's office, one of the issues with our pretrial system is that it is bifurcated. It is the sheriff's office and probation running a program, and that leads to cost issues where you have admin on both sides of that. It leads to duplicative services, which is also a cost issue, but also a performance issue. And there are the data sharing and communication issues that others have raised today, and I'm glad that there are some options on the table to help address that, because it's important that we be able to track how our pretrial system is going and make decisions based on that data, not based on our fear or what, you know, the most recent story in the Oregonian is. One of the other things about a unified system is the continuity in transfers. And so, you know, this is one thing that gives me some concern about option 2, is that it continues this bifurcation. And I appreciate that the court has thought through some ways to address that, but we are still going to have a pretrial system operating out of 2 different agencies. And that is going to lead to those cost issues, but it's also going to lead to data sharing issues, continuity and supervision issues, and many others. It makes more sense to put it all in one location. The second thing that I think is important to focus on is making sure that any pretrial monitoring program that we have is approachable and relationship driven. And our current system, you know, is run by the sheriff and probation, and there is a belief that is not driven by data that if someone is monitored by law enforcement, they're going to be more likely to be compliant. Not only is that not supported by any research, but it really flies in the face of the realities of our community. If that were the case, we frankly would not have crime, because our community is constantly monitored by law enforcement. In reality, many of the people, especially those who find themselves entangled in the criminal legal system, have a fear of law enforcement. And if not a fear, at least a distrust of law enforcement. And a distrusting relationship is not conducive to pretrial monitoring. If we want defendants to regularly check in, to engage in services, to be vulnerable about what their needs are, to call somebody up when they're struggling, that will not happen if we are placing that in law enforcement. And we have seen that with our current system, and we've seen it in other jurisdictions. Those doing pretrial monitoring need to be approachable. We need to rely on peers and case managers, those that the clientele associate with delivering services. And that concern extends to option 2. Option 1 is obviously an unknown of where that would be placed. But option 2, it would be with the release assistance officers. Just including the term officer is going to affect the people who we have reporting to this pretrial monitoring program. There is going to be resistance because of that name alone, but also the association with the court. I also do have some concerns about the impartiality of the bench. The court is supposed to be the neutral arbiter of facts, and there are 2 parties that present in front of it. And the more we make their function investigative and monitoring, the more we erode that very important neutrality. And so I did want to raise that concern about option 2 as well. But finally, and I really do feel like this is the most important, is that this needs to be focused on service connections. The court mentioned that the release assistance officers would be administering services from the RECOG. For those of you that don't know, the RECOG is part of the booking process. It's when somebody is brought in after immediately being arrested. As you might imagine, emotions are running fairly high. People are irritated. People are detoxing. It is not a time to engage them in a needs-based discussion about their service needs. And so I'm not sure how that handoff would actually function in reality. But one thing that is consistent throughout all the research, all the best practices, is the importance of those service connections. It makes sense if you think about it, because if we want somebody to show up to court and we want somebody to not commit new crimes, they need to be stable in the community. And stability comes through addressing those underlying issues. It comes from that support. And so there is very little research out there about requiring call-ins for people to call in to a pretrial monitoring, but that does exist shows very little to no advantage for making sure that people appear to their court dates and for making sure that they remain crime-free in the community. Contrarily, service delivery, there's a tremendous amount of research that shows how effective that is. And so, I understand that courts are in a very difficult position when they have to make a release decision. They are balancing the presumption of innocence and the rights of the defendants against, frankly, the fear that that person will go out and commit a new crime. And that is not an easy position to be in. But nothing that we do in this pretrial model will change that. Having people call in regularly is not going to change that. Having supervision and house visits is going to have nominal effect on that. And even GPS, unless done effectively, is also going to have nominal effectiveness there. So I would encourage this body, to the extent that we are in a deficit budget and we need to cut services, to focus on that service administration. I understand that pretrial monitoring has traditionally been a role of the court, and this county is rather unique in having its role in pretrial monitoring. But the county is responsible for the administration of those services, of housing services, substance use services, mental health services, and the pretrial population presents some of the most vulnerable in our community, some of the most in need of those services. And I think it's helpful if this body sees our pretrial program as a way to administer services to those who otherwise may be service resistant. And in doing so, you are also accomplishing the goals of pretrial release, because when people have those services and are more stable, they're more likely to make their court dates, and they're less likely to commit new crimes. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We'll now go to the board for any questions. We'll start with Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to thank everybody just for the work that I know has gone into this. I don't know how we are on time, and I have a lot of questions, so Chair, if you just want me to say them out loud,
yes,
and we'll come back to them, that's fine. But I do want to appreciate all the work that I know that has gone into this. I honestly think that we are at a space where we're talking a lot about option 1 or option 2, and I think neither is the right approach. When we're in a scenario for a cut year, I think it's important for us to focus on what we do best. What the county does best is support services. What the courts may do best is the monitoring as part of their role. And these options now are kind of blurring all of those roles into one option or the other. And I really see a path forward for an option 3 that is a bit of a hybrid of these two. I want to appreciate a conversation I had with Commissioner Jones-Dickson, as well as Judges Greenlick and Howell and Barb, to talk about how we might be able to get to a third option that really takes the best of the monitoring component and the best of the services component, and gives us an option to look at that we can then decide what does the county have the ability to fund. There will be some follow-up I'll do on that, and I know Commissioner Jones-Dickson also wants to continue to work on that. So I will say all my questions, don't feel like y'all have to answer. Just for victim advocates, I want to say, as a former victim advocate for survivors of sexual and domestic violence, I know how critical that service is. I won't have a lot of questions for you because I'm already sold, so just know that I'm not ignoring what you all brought to the table today. So I have some questions for DCJ. I'm curious about the realities of the RECOG unit. They did not have an opportunity to speak today, and so I think it's important that we hear directly from that department about what the staff do, what the need is, and what might be realistic to pull into a third option. There was some conversation about the OPAT tool. I would love to know if the courts trust that tool, if that's something that folks are willing to implement. I want to highlight that there was a comment by our victim advocate folks that there's most of the risk assessments don't include some of the risks that they highlighted. I'm curious if the OPAT does that, and if not, if there's something we need to do to adjust that part of the tool. In the full report, there's a number of enhancements that are listed around housing placement, some different monitoring tools, some different data pieces. I'd love to know where we're at in agreement on there. They're listed under both option 1 and option 2. What are the enhancements that we think we actually need would be helpful for me to know. And then that will help us then back into what the actual cost of any of those enhancements might be. I'm not convinced yet that when we say needs assessment in this pretrial space that we're all talking about the same thing. As a social worker, a needs assessment is a very long tool to me. We ask a lot of things about, it turns into a biopsychosocial assessment. It's tons and tons of information. I don't think the courts need all of that information, so I'm unclear. I think we've got to get a little more clear on what we each mean by needs assessment so we understand what parts make sense to live with monitoring and what parts might make sense to live with services. There's some conversation about location. In addition, it talks about space from DCJ. My understanding is that space is not actually available, so we'll need to confirm that. I know it's listed in option 2. There's also space listed in option 2 from the sheriff's office. My understanding is that space may also not actually be available. So we need to understand what is real about location and understand if we need to find other space and what that would cost. So again, we can actually do some digging down into the cost scenarios. And then a lot about data sharing. As an outsider, I'm not clear what data we're talking about and what data needs to be shared. I think it leans into that needs assessment piece. If I was somebody's therapist, there's things I would not need or want to share with the court, and then if I'm their case manager, there may be things that I do want to share. And so I think understanding what those data pieces actually are would be extremely helpful. So I think there's a lot of follow-up to do, to be perfectly blunt. I don't believe the numbers in either scenario. I want to understand and dig into the actual cost a little bit better. There's pieces missing from both that I don't think tell the full story cost. But again, this is really amazing work in a short time. I know the idea was this was going to last for a while to be able to make a transition, and we kind of put a quick time clock on everybody. So I'm not saying the work isn't good. I just don't think we're there yet, and I would like to take some more time, work with Commissioner Jones-Dickson, some of our partners, and see if we can't find a compromise deal here that makes sense for all parties involved and get us out of this false binary that we're stuck in here today. So Chair, with that, I will stop and we'll do all the answers, I assume, in follow-up.
We'll definitely make sure that any of the questions asked today by the board are sent out for the right folks to get some of the answers, and then make sure they're shared with the entire board. Commissioner Jones-Dickson.
Great, thank you, Chair. Thank you all for the presentation and for the information this morning. To build off of what Commissioner Singleton has said, I think there's a third option, and we need to come together and jointly come up with that and the path forward. As someone that's been a victim of just violence from back in 2008, right after high school, one of the main things that I wanted was, one, for the individual that tried to literally kill me to receive the help that he needed, and then also the opportunity to come together and have a reconciliatory, conversation and figure out a path forward. And those are the opportunities that we have here. I met an individual less than a year ago that went through the pretrial system, and all things considered, she was fully rehabilitated from the supports that she received outside of the system, and we were able to work through other challenges that she faced over the last 10 years of her life. So those are the opportunities that we have, and we're in a very pivotal moment to lead and to come up with those solutions. And also, I want to bring us back to, we're on a short timeline. We need to come up with a path or a decision by July, I think, regarding the pretrial, seeing that because of the changes. And then lastly, I don't feel like we should cut corners. We need to make the investment. So just to the subcommittee, whatever that number is, name it, and then we need to meet that moment and we need to make the necessary investment. So thank you all for just the time and being here this morning and just being honest with the recommendations.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Brim-Edwards.
Yeah, thank you. And just for clarity, I think I would say that because we don't yet have a budget, nor do we have cuts, that we just have to keep that in mind. So we'll know more when the chair's budget is released. And I think LIPSIC, because we have spent a significant amount of time, will continue to be the place where the partners are all at the table. And I want to just acknowledge and appreciate all the work that went into providing both options. I don't think anyone ever thought that we'd be here today like picking one of the two options, but this is an opportunity really for us to elevate sort of the issues, concerns, what do we think are feasible alternatives to sort of meet our objectives, what are our objectives of the system. So again, I want to just thank all the people who have been meeting for a long time in the pretrial subcommittee, but also at LIPSIC where all the partners, or many of the partners are at the table. A couple questions I have, and this would be, I think, a question for the courts and the DA and DC, well, the courts, the sheriff, and DCJ. So if we could have somebody answer this question. What are the immediate and long-term impacts of having no funded monitoring programs? And I don't need a long answer, but just, if we have a cliff on July 1, and again, I'd like the sheriff and DCJ to answer this, like just systemically, because you're all.
So can we gather the questions and then ask for folks, because I'm afraid we're not going to get the full picture from everyone with the compressed time.
I'd like to get one question answered. We have everybody in the room, so I can ask this one question, and I'll submit the rest of mine for the record.
Okay, that sounds great.
Just like we have everybody here, so if the sheriff and DCJ, and part of the point of this question is like also to, I think, set the stage of we really need our partners to come together who all have critical pieces of it, of what's the impact of that, of having, if we are on July 1 and no agreed upon monitoring program.
Well, if there was no monitoring, like you mentioned, there would be a cliff. So like if the monitoring just went away, Close Street closed down, DCJ, PSP closed down on July 1st, we would have hundreds of people on pretrial release where judges made a decision after considering victim impact in the DA and the defense position to put people on conditional release with that monitoring. And that would, if we just took that away, we would be in a very difficult spot of having to possibly reconsider our release decision for hundreds of people. So it's really important that we have some sort of transition so that we don't make commitments to the community and to the victims, that there'll be a certain level of monitoring and supervision and then just take that away.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, Denise Pena, Director for DCJ. I use she, her pronouns. For DCJ Commissioner, we would need to be essentially ramping down the clients or the defendants that we currently have in our pretrial program. So that would be a lot of coordination with the courts. Since we are unable to release somebody from our pretrial program, we would need the courts to be able to do that order. And so that would be getting those clients and passing that on, as well if any of them are currently on GPS or EM, we would need to make sure that we're able to transition those off as well from those.
Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell, Multnomah County Sheriff. I am in agreement that we have been in continual communication that a ramp down is absolutely necessary to ensure the safety of our community, as well as ensuring that the clients that are currently on these programs have adequate direction and monitoring throughout the rest of their court process with the assistance of the courts, since the release decisions were made with these two programs in place.
Thank you. Right, and you'll
Great, and I'll submit the rest of my questions. I think the answers here are really, should be the catalyst for all to come together of that there's not a cliff, but a bridge to a different system, to meet those goals that we talked about, community safety, having a just system, and a cost-effective system within the budget we have.
Thank you. Commissioner Moyer.
That was par.
Thank you. Commissioner Singleton pointed out several specific questions, so I'm very interested in the answers we get for that. I have not having criminal justice as a significant portion of my career background. I am in the unenviable spot of not knowing how to weigh competing proposals that call the other one's assumptions into question, and that's just not a situation I feel knowledgeable enough, which I can't speak for my colleagues, but makes this very difficult. So I cannot implore the people who have taken on this difficult task to continue working, because a unified strategy would be exponentially better for this board to consider than having to evaluate components of different portions. I also think it is incredibly important that whatever we do moving forward, that we have the buy-in of the organizations that would be doing that work. That is a concern I have, particularly about option 2, is if those departments are not bought in the work, I don't know how it's delivered well. But either scenario, I feel a little bit wanting, we are weighing a lot of competing goals, and I think that is the hardest part of this, is threading the needle as best we can to try to achieve many important community priorities. I am really interested, and I know some of the background alluded to this, but again, without understanding the value of some of these different monitoring tools or approaches, I am really a person who wants to understand the science behind things. What benefit is electronic monitoring or not? What is the efficacy of call-ins versus call-outs? How are we balancing the resource with the outcome? I will say I am probably least knowledgeable about the matrix, the new matrix, although I'm excited it's an Oregon-based one, but I am really interested in understanding how, I believe it's the OPAT, would, to what degree the court plans on adhering to that, and therefore we could, or how they would integrate that into their work. I think having things linger out there, and so any clarity from the court would be helpful around, in what scenarios is the court most comfortable releasing people, and what are the scenarios in which they're least comfortable, so that we can gauge with different levels of investment what it would achieve. It's very difficult to try to balance jail population and keeping that at a level that allows us to operate in a way that we're not matrix releasing, plus public safety, plus, what is possible in monitoring and our responsiveness, and I don't know what each thing gets us. So, obviously every judge has to make their decision, and you can't tie everything, but I would like to understand with XYZ, we would be highly likely to adhere to the OPAT, or without XYZ, then we'll have to, these are the areas we'll be deeply uncomfortable with people being released on their own recognizance. I don't know what, again, I'm not a criminal justice expert. I don't know what you can and cannot tell me about those things, but I don't know how to weigh different levels of investments or different models if I don't know what it gets us. So to the degree that that's possible, I would absolutely love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I really just want to appreciate everybody being here today for the long engagement that's happened in this conversation, for Commissioners Moyer and Brim Edwards for having the budget note so we could continue to really make sure the board is getting updated on the progress of the conversations that were happening. I think for me, as we move forward, the important thing is to recognize, like, we are all in a time of limited resources. Multnomah County in many ways is out of step with other counties in how we are running our pretrial program. And even though there have been a lot of considerations that have been brought up today, there are also pieces that we just need to make sure that we are considering, whether it's, when we talk about risk, are we all talking about the same type of risk? Is it the risk to public safety? Is it the risk to somebody failing to appear in court? Like, what are, making sure we're sharing common language, and that, as we're thinking about the changes to the system, the impacts to the system, the different ideas that are in the proposals before us, or a third path that we want to consider. What are some of the constraints that we have, for instance, in collective bargaining agreements or some of these things, and making sure that all of those pieces are being considered and incorporated so that we truly have a system that meets our goals, but understanding that, what we're going to be building forward is going to look different than what we've had right now. So thanks everyone for that. We're going to move on to our next briefing item. I will say that we are going to move on to B3 because we have some external guests here, and this is a very short item. So we're going to ask the folks, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Jones-Dickson to introduce this, and I believe this is about a 15-minute item.
Yes,
all right.
15 to 20-minute item, and we'll save the questions for the next briefing. So Chair and colleagues, I want to invite just OSU Extension Program. We have a few folks here, Angelina, I believe Heidi as well, and they are here to share about just the impacts of the OSU Extension program and the investment that we made as far as reestablishing the partnership this last year, thanks to the co-amendment that Commissioner Moyer brought forward. So they're going to share about just the work that's been happening over this last year, and then also the potential for the future. So I will hand it off to Angela, yes, and Heidi, and then Shantae from the Feed 'em Freedom Foundation, and also want to shout out to some of the other farmers and ag folks here, like Play Grow Learn and other people. So thank you for being here this morning, and I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Vega Peterson and Commissioners. On behalf of OSU Extension, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name's Angela Sandino, and I'm the Regional Director for Oregon State University Extension Service. I serve Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas counties. Joining me today are Heidi Nordyke, Small Farms Coordinator with OSU Extension, and Shantae Johnson, Executive Director of Feed 'em Freedom Foundation. We really appreciate the opportunity to share a brief update on OSU Extension's work in Multnomah County and the impact of your support in fiscal year 26. Next slide, please. One of the unique strengths of OSU Extension is that we are present in every Oregon county and on the lands of the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs. The statewide network shown here on this map of Oregon allows OSU Extension to bring local relationships together with university-based research, technical expertise, and proven programming. In Multnomah County, we are able to connect local needs with resources and successful practices from across the state while remaining grounded in the priorities of this community because of our strong partnerships with local communities, such as our partnership with Feed 'em Freedom. Next slide, please. We are very grateful for Multnomah County's investment in OSU Extension. Because of this investment, we were also able to continue to offer programming in other areas, such as our partnership with the Multnomah County Department of Health and Metro Regional Government. Your support this year has helped us specifically provide funding for a coordinator position, share workshop materials and host events, and support our team to offer soil and plant tissue testing. Together, these investments have allowed us to strengthen technical assistance to local farmers, expand access to education and training, and support the work you're going to hear from Heidi and Shantae in the next few minutes. Next slide, please. OSU Extension's role is to serve as a trusted, neutral convener and technical partner to Multnomah County. On this slide, you will see our work this year highlighted in the orange boxes. OSU Extension is able to do this great work because we clarify opportunities, align partners, and identify practical pathways to address community needs and advance shared goals. We bring deep expertise in agriculture, small farms, horticulture, food systems, natural resources, nutrition, health, and youth development that is grounded in a long history of service to Multnomah County. And OSU supports this work by developing curriculum, trainings, and evaluation tools, coordinating local organizations and community partners, centering the needs and voices of Black, Latino, Indigenous, and immigrant farmers, and building connections across sectors to strengthen long-term community outcomes. Next slide, please.
Great. Thank you, commissioners, for having me here today, and Commissioner Jones-Dixon for leading the support in this work. Over the past several months, this project has focused on moving from vision to on-the-ground planning through technical support, site visits, online meetings, workshop development, and engagement with OSU state specialists. Since July, I have been out to the site 5 times, and we had monthly meetings throughout 2025, and then in January we shifted to biweekly planning meetings. This has allowed us to respond to the evolving needs, set priorities, and for me to connect with the right expertise at OSU and in the community to bring these folks to the table as our planning has progressed from the farm and food portion of the community food hub. Our first site visit in July established a shared understanding of the site and Feed 'em Freedom Foundation's community vision. This was followed by an August planning meeting where we compiled site history maps and identified which additional partners and specialists would best support the vision of Feed 'em Freedom for the site. In September, we had an online meeting that connected the project team with OSU specialists in agroforestry and food forest, and that was followed by a hands-on site visit in September where we did soil testing and brought in Nate Stacy, who is a soil specialist with OSU Extension. We worked with Feed 'em Freedom Foundation and the Maroon Mob to map the site, flag out zones, and then we did demonstrations of soil sampling techniques and collected the soil samples. Those samples were taken from 6 distinct areas at the site, and then we sent them to the lab for testing of nutrients and heavy metals that are commonly found in urban soils. The soil test results, there were no levels of concern for the heavy metals, including lead and chromium, and the nutrient levels were all within expected ranges, so we were grateful that there weren't any surprises there. Those results gave us confidence to move forward and form the foundation for future soil health and nutrient management plans as we finalize plant selections. In October, we had the food forest and agroforestry specialists do a site visit. We added contour maps, seasonal weather patterns, and plant selection considerations to the planning documents. Bringing in those specialists that ensures that the design is ecologically sound, productive, and built for long-term stewardship. Beyond working with Shantae and Art and the Feed 'em Freedom team in Gresham, I also worked with Play, Grow, Learn in Rockwood. We did some soil testing there and then worked with Jermaine on installing some moisture sensors for water resilience and irrigation. And then I conducted an initial site visit to Outgrowing Hunger, where we identified shared priorities around soil fertility, post-harvest handling, and farm to institution markets, so working on education and one-on-one support for the farmers up at Outgrowing Hunger to focus on their priorities. The outcomes from this initial phase has increased our soil safety assurance, it improved site readiness, and it informed food forest design and a stronger cross-program collaboration throughout Extension to support Feed 'em Freedom Foundation, and it also expanded reach across multiple BIPOC farming communities with this project. Next slide, please. And building on that foundation, the next phase of the project transitioned from assessment into community engagement and applied learning with the launch of a spring workshop series. Again, beginning in January, I met regularly with Feed 'em Freedom Foundation to design the workshops that aligned with their goals while also considering the site readiness, the weather, and the status of water access at the site. The first public workshop took place on March 21st. You can see a photo from that workshop there, and the energy was palpable. The Community Food Forest Design Workshop brought together 38 participants and served as an accessible entry point for community members to help shape the future of the site. The workshop began with a welcoming circle that Shantae led, followed by time to walk around and observe the site, grounding participants in both place and purpose. Marisha Auerbach, who is an OSU permaculture instructor, and David Granfield, an urban forester with the City of Portland, co-led the workshop, bringing in their expertise in permaculture design, urban forestry, food forests, and long-term land stewardship. Participants received a packet that had site maps, aerial site maps, sketch paper, map design resources, food forest plant selection, and year-round maintenance materials, along with the site vision from Feed 'em Freedom Foundation. We created 2 large maps, so they were 2 foot by 3 foot, that were mounted and displayed at the site so people could have an initial vision of the site, and that helped support collaborative learning. After our time at the site, we moved to the Rockwood Library for lunch, and then a hands-on mapping exercise, which you can see a photo of there. And that we had 6 groups that developed design concepts using the 2 foot by 3 foot maps, infrastructure cutouts, and scaled planting symbols. Each group presented their designs and reasonings behind their designs, and then all the maps and notes were scanned and coded so we could have a record of the input, and that's going to directly inform the next steps for our future workshops. We also had 3 guiding questions during the workshop, and responses to those questions revealed a strong shared vision centered on broad inclusion, hands-on stewardship, workforce development pathways, and a space that supports learning, healing, creativity, accessibility, and long-term care of both people and the land. Overall, the second phase has resulted in increased community ownership, actionable design guidance, expanded collaboration, and alignment between education, workforce development, and long-term stewardship. And now I'm going to pass it to Shantae to share about the work of Feed 'em Freedom Foundation.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. First, I want to just say thank you to the commissioners for your significant investment in OSU Extension over the past year and for the support of Commissioner Jones-Dickson to allocate critical funds to Feed 'em Freedom. Your support is strengthening our work to address food insecurity and health inequity by empowering our community to grow food and run small businesses. The current food crisis is urgent. We've seen that with distribution interruptions and SNAP cuts. There's been quite a bit of loss around food access. And our region's reliance on large-scale producers limits the availability of local and culturally relevant foods. At Feed 'em Freedom, we're addressing this heads-on. In the last year alone, we've served over 26,000 people in our food pantry, did 15 community educational workshops, and purchased over $200,000 worth of fresh produce and proteins from local BIPOC producers. We are strengthening the local food economy by directing public dollars towards small local BIPOC producers. The Black Community Food Hub, a home for resilience, for over a decade, we have supported emerging farmers around the Portland metro area. Feed 'em Freedom is dedicated to fostering resilient food systems for Oregon communities by empowering Black agriculturalists to lead and own our land stewardship, regional food security, and economic prosperity. As a Black-led regional food hub, we focus on sourcing from Black and global majority producers, ranchers, fishermen, and herbalists, driving value chain coordination, creating pipelines into community sourcing, and institutional and direct markets to generate economic vitality for people of the global majority. Our core work includes land access, direct market facilitation, capacity building, aggregating, and distribution, while practicing a cooperative economic model. Now we're finally building a home base for our efforts, the Black Community Food Hub and Food Forest on our 5-acre property in Gresham, which we just recently purchased in 2024 that we're really excited about. The hub is designed to be a permanent center for economic development, a collective that supports emerging farmers, youth, and food insecure families through education, apprenticeship programs, and culturally relevant food distribution. It is a working urban farm that celebrates innovative growing methods and serves as a critical workforce development infrastructure for emerging BIPOC producers. We're in this initial phase 1 of activating our food hub and food forest space, which is critical for immediate impact and laying the groundwork for future development. So some of the funds that we received from the county were able to dream and activate the space with some of the workshops that were mentioned previously. The site activation and due diligence are underway, and we will immediately begin stewarding the land and initiating initial farming on the property. This includes working with OSU on the soil testing, analysis, identifying NRCS requirements, and prioritizing initial infrastructure projects that, like securing a high tunnel permit and implementing cover crop trials, along with the food forest and an orchard. Our Maroon Mob launch, we're looking at preparing the launch of the Maroon Mob, which is a workforce development initiative. What that looks like is developing curriculum in partnership with OSU with BIPOC agricultural workers who are trained to install low-impact farm infrastructure for regenerative farming. We believe by training a workforce skilled in low-impact infrastructure, we're supporting our community's capacity for regenerative, low-till, sustainable growing practices and creating green job pathways for environmental justice communities. The community is really at the heart of this project, and we really believe in centering community design. With the completion of our first food forest workshop, just like Heidi mentioned, it was highly successful, and it was really great to have so many brilliant minds at the table, and folks with little to no experience to a lot of experience in the room to be able to envision and participate in our food forest. We are currently getting ready for permitting for plumbing and electricity to the site, which is needed to be able to help our plants to grow and the orchard to expand. Our goal is to complete pre-development and initial fundraising efforts to be shovel-ready for future build-out.
Great. Thanks, Shantae. And again, I'm grateful that you all have provided the opportunity that I can work with Shantae and Feed 'em Freedom.
Your mic, yeah. We have about 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
But continue
Great.
with the thanks.
Okay.
We're receiving it.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to highlight
Thank you, actually.
what's coming next on this site and how this works how this work fits into the broader agriculture extension efforts across Multnomah County. Looking ahead, we have 3 additional on-site workshops planned, and their content is directly shaped by the maps, design concepts, and community input gathered during the Community Food Forest Design Workshop. Our next workshop is going to take place on April 25th, and that's going to be around soil health and establishing the site for tree fruit plantings. Feed 'em Freedom Foundation is going to be forming a community design think tank made up of workshop participants with experience in design and food forests to help guide the next phase of site planning. And then this site-based work is part of a broader extension footprint across Multnomah County. So I support farm viability and soil stewardship through service on West Multnomah's Soil and Water Conservation District Ripple Grant Review Committee, direct work with Sauvie Island farmers, partnerships with EcoTrust on workshops and agricultural education, and part of the OXU extension team that provides updates with the Multnomah County Farm Bureau. We also saw strong local impact at Small Farm School, which is in Oregon City, where Multnomah County had the highest representation this year, with 90 out of the 302 attendees coming from Multnomah County. And that has led to East Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District joining as a planning partner. So together, these efforts reflect a consistent program outcome, strengthening community-driven agriculture through technical expertise, meaningful partnerships, and education supporting healthy soils, resilient farms, and inclusive food systems across Multnomah County. And now I'll pass it over to Angela for closing.
Okay, closing with 2 quick slides. Next slide, please. So looking ahead to fiscal year 27, we see an opportunity to play a larger role as a neutral convener and technical partner. Our goal is to work with our partners to bring together stakeholders from agriculture, food systems, workforce development, economic development, to identify shared challenges. We plan to facilitate meetings that create space for farmers, community organizations, employers, educators, and public partners to work together. And from that process, we would develop 2 concrete products. First, a strategic roadmap that identifies priority actions, partnership opportunities, and areas for advocacy. And secondly, a workforce table report focused on food and agriculture career pathways and the workforce needs of Multnomah County. At the same time, we plan to continue providing direct technical assistance to local farmers to help strengthen the long-term resilience and viability of their operations. And then next slide, please. This is the last slide. This work is closely aligned with Multnomah County's strategic plan and equity goals. Our approach is designed to ensure that participation reflects the racial, cultural, and geographic diversity of Multnomah County, particularly District 4. We're committed to convening processes that are accessible, culturally responsive, and inclusive of voices that have not always been represented in these conversations. Next slide, please. At this point, we would love to welcome your questions or comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we're not going to have time, unfortunately, for questions today, but we do all appreciate all of the work that's gone into this. It's great to hear about some of the outcomes of the investments that we've made, and just appreciate it. And I have to say, we have such a great partnership with our with Freedom Feed 'em and the work that's happening out in East County already. The honey that's produced is absolutely delicious, and so many good outcomes are coming. So thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, just one final comment. I know the Multnomah County, I don't know if there's any members of the Multnomah County Farm Bureau here. I attended their meeting last week, and they, or a couple weeks ago, and one of the farmers from Rossi Farm just shared just how big of a game changer this is having you here, especially for all of the farmers. And some of the farms that you mentioned are farms that are small farms that are inside of, you know, the city off of 146 and Stark, all the way out to Topaz Farm and the farms out in Corbett. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're looking forward to using this work to continue to build America's favorite county. Thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Jones Dixon. Thank you all for being here. All right, now we'll move back to our second briefing item, which is the informational briefing on the 2025 countywide employee survey. So I would ask those folks to come on down, Samuel Ashby and other folks who are going to be leading us through this presentation. We are running a little late today, so I expect us to go to about 12:30.
Yeah.
I want to give, first of all, my heartfelt thanks to everyone at the county for their work on this, including members of our survey advisory group, our evaluation and research unit, and of course the thousands of employees who took this survey. Multnomah County has administered a countywide employee survey for decades now. Each iteration is an opportunity to hear directly from our employees and make Multnomah County an employer and workplace of choice, improve upon what we're doing. I'm excited to hear this report and find ways for us to improve our work here at the county. So with that, Sam, I will turn it over to you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Good morning to commissioners and members of the Survey Advisory Group. My name is Samuel Ashby, and I serve the county as Director of Strategic Initiatives within the Office of the COO, and I use he and him pronouns. It is an honor to be with you this morning to share the countywide employee survey with you. I just wanted to kick us off with a high-level altitude view of what the survey is, why it matters so much for this organization at this point in time. Countywide Employee Survey is, of course, the largest and broadest instrument for understanding our employees' experiences, needs, and perceptions. And honestly, I think it's even our oldest, which is pretty handy when it's so important to be tracking changes for better or worse over time. But it also isn't a standalone tool, at least not anymore. I've been at the county for almost a year and a half now, and a pretty consistent theme that I've heard since I've gotten here, from this board even, is that so much of the work that we do, whether public or inward-facing, is good as important on its own, but what's lacking is alignment and synergy and leverage among those things. So I want to let you know that this actually isn't the case with the Countywide Employee Survey. I think one of the most impressive things about how well it supports and slots into some of our most critical organizational initiatives. First, the survey hooks directly into the Workplace Equity Strategic Plan. It is not a formal evaluation of the West, but it does give us a really important snapshot of employees' experiences, especially related to belonging and diversity efforts, in a way that helps us gauge and grow our equity work. The survey also has clear lines to our Multnomah County Strategic Plan that we approved last year. In fact, in the process of building our strategic plan, we were intentional about drawing directly from the survey to write measures that roll up into our indicators and outcomes within improved operational excellence as a focus area. Lastly, the big changes that we are making to adopt a shared service model for some of our functions like human resources are being driven by what our employees have told us through the survey. You're going to hear much more about these later in the briefing, but before that, I want to turn things over to the amazing Allison Sachet, our evaluation and research manager who leads our equally amazing ERU team.
Good morning, Allison.
Good morning. Thank you, Samuel. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Allison Sachet. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the manager of the Evaluation and Research Unit in the Department of County Management. Thank you for inviting us today to talk about the 2025 Countywide Employee Survey results. We appreciate all your time and thoughtful engagement in better understanding employees' experiences, all the employees who serve Multnomah County. Today, we'll be presenting a very broad overview of the countywide results. And later today, you will all have access to all of the report materials on the ERU Commons page, which includes several ways to explore the data, including a full countywide report, department summaries, identity summaries, and an interactive dashboard. But we'll start today with a broad overview, which highlights the main quantitative and qualitative results for employees across the county. Next slide, please. Before we dig into the results, I'd love to express our deep gratitude for all of the employees of Multnomah County, including the 3,602 employees who dedicated their time to complete the survey. Thank you for sharing your feedback and for all you do every day to serve Multnomah County communities. I'll pass it off to the wonderful ERU team to talk about the survey results. Jillian's up first. Thanks, Jillian.
Hi, Jillian Gerard, she, her pronouns. I'm an analyst in the Evaluation and Research Unit.
Next slide, please. The Countywide Employee Survey is the largest ongoing effort to collect data about the employee experience. In the most recent iteration, which occurred in October, November 2025, 3,602 employees filled out the survey. That's a 57% response rate. In addition, we received 1,056 comments from employees, which ranged from very short to pages and pages long, giving us a really rich data set. Next slide. Once we collect both the quantitative or numeric data as well as the qualitative comment data, we analyze it using rigorous research methods. For example, in the qualitative analysis, we performed dual coding, and then we also did a reliability analysis. Once we analyze both the quantitative and qualitative, we bring those findings together into an integrated report and presentation that you'll see today. There are 5 primary components as part of the survey: job satisfaction, supervision and communication, belonging, job or work climate general, which is about employees' experience of workforce equity efforts, and then work climate identity, which is how others perceive the identities that we hold. We also ask a series of demographic questions that include both work and personal identities, and that open-ended question I mentioned previously. Next slide. So why are we doing this? We conduct this survey to inform the organization and learn about the employee experiences directly from employees. We hope that this supports organizational goals, equity efforts, and ultimately we hope it leads to action through informed decision-making. Next slide. The Evaluation and Research Unit doesn't do this alone. We work collaboratively with the Survey Advisory Group. We draw that group from across the county. So we recruit from department equity teams, employee resource groups, as well as unions. That group has both rep and non-represented employees as members. This slide and the following 2 slides includes a list of all of the members of our survey advisory group, and we work with them throughout the entire life cycle of the survey. So before we even administer the survey, they're talking about what questions we should ask, what changes we need to make, and then they help with analysis as well as communication as well. The list of survey advisory group members is also included in the report for your reference there. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Violet Wild to give a statement from the survey advisory group.
Good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Violet Wild. I'm extremely proud to work for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, and it's an honour to bring you this message from the Survey Advisory Group today. We thank everyone who contributed to the Countywide Employee Survey, and each person who participated played a vital role, lending their unique voice to this testimony of workplace experience. The Survey Advisory Group is composed of Multnomah County employees who make that commitment to helping to create survey questions and to expand communication channels for the survey results. And we do represent a diverse range of county departments and employee resource groups. The work that we do is guided by the highly skilled members of the Evaluation and Research Unit. Without their unwavering commitment to best practice methodology, their scrupulous integrity in facilitating and maintaining confidentiality, and their exemplary service to their fellow county colleagues, none of us would have this avenue for communication and for growth. The Survey Advisory Group extends our immense gratitude to this small but mighty team. It is more important than ever for employees to be heard and for leaders to listen. We recognise that with budget constraints and the ever-evolving needs of our community, department leaders are navigating difficult terrain. We ask them to make this countywide employee survey their roadmap and to treat the feedback from their employees as signposts to guide policy and decision-making. We ask department leaders to face these results with courage and commitment, particularly if some of the results are not what they hoped. Honest feedback is a powerful and transformative gift for those who are willing to accept it. The Survey Advisory Group acknowledges the significant and consistent investment from county leadership in the survey process. This survey is an essential mechanism for providing to county employees what county employees strive to create for our community: a diverse, thriving community with a sustainable future where all are safe, connected, and empowered to contribute. More employees will contribute when they see that their voice matters. Employees who don't participate are sending the loudest message. We thank you for the opportunity to provide perspective and to convey our hope that the publication of the 2025 Countywide Employee Survey is not the conclusion of its cycle, but actually just the start. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I turn it over to Canada.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Canada Taylor Parker. I am the Workforce Trauma Support Program Coordinator. And I'm here to reflect with you on the power of data. And it's beautiful, the work that ERU has done. This team is amazing. And we, our brains, love data, but data is only as good as the story it tells. And what we've had the opportunity to do in this process together with all the employees who've come together to help support and thought partner in this is really look at what is the story that our county is telling us. My own role is one in which I interact with people across the entire county, and I get a lot of the qualitative data, and I have some data I take in my program. Looking at the data that I receive, looking at the data that we received as a whole, it tells us a story that, yes, people will share their experiences, people talk about their departments, people talk about their everyday work experience here, and there's a lot of hope in that. Our brains often default to negative data, and so I hope that all of us look at this with the hope, the vision, and the positivity of what Multnomah County wants to be and what every employee has shared in this, that change is possible, that growth is happening, and generally people actually feel good about a lot of things here. Right now in this role, it's very easy not to see that, and so the hope is that employees are actually heard in this, but also the hopes of everyone who works at Multnomah County, all the thousands of people who did not respond, but their voices were also heard in that data as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Timothy Ho, he, him, his pronouns. I am an analyst with the Evaluation and Research Unit, and I want to thank the employees of Multnomah County for filling out the survey and for keeping our communities safe and healthy and enriched. Next slide, please. And I will start to go over some of the results, the findings from the employee survey, and I hope ERU does a good job of representing your voice as well in this presentation and in the report. We framed our report and this presentation around a multi-layer perspective of the workplace experience. First is the individual level, that's each individual employee and what's impacting the employee's day-to-day ability to do their best work in their positions that they're in. Next is the team level, and these are the folks that employees interact with the most, and how do employees describe the relationships with the people they work with on their team. Next up is the department and the division leadership, and here we start to see more structure disseminate down to employees and what supports employees are asking for to best perform their jobs. And at the highest level is the county leadership level, where employees start to get the culture of Multnomah County disseminated, passed down to them, and again, distribute services to the best ability to the Multnomah County community. Next slide, please. As mentioned by Jillian, the survey encompasses 5 survey areas, and this graph here shows the past 4 iterations of the survey since 2019. And each of the 5 survey areas have increased over time since 2019 to 2025. The bulk of the survey has response options ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree, a range of 1 to 4, with the 4 or strongly agree representing the most positive findings. In each of the 5 survey areas since 2019, we have seen an increase to the most recent survey in 2025. In job satisfaction, the average was 3.0 in 2019, increased to 3.02 in 2025. Supervision and communication, 2.77 in 2019 to an average of 2.97 in 2025. The belonging area, 2.99 in 2019 to 3.17 in 2025. Work climate general, 3.03 in 2019 to 2025. and work climate identity, 3.22 in 2019 to 3.43 in 2025. So although there was a slight dip in 2021, that was the year of the survey that, of course, covered the COVID year and a lot of civil unrest happening in Multnomah County. That was reflected in the survey in 2021, but we did see a bounce back in averages in 2023, and the 2025 iteration of the survey saw it maintain a lot of those rebounds in 2023. Next slide, please. So first I will go over individual level findings, and here we will talk about concerns around compensation, workload, and the ability to access resources. Next slide, please. So this graph shows a sample of questions and the percent agreement to each of those questions in the job satisfaction area. So you see a range of the scores here. A lot of questions in the survey had a response and agreement rates higher than 80%, but a lot of questions had agreement rates lower than 80% as well. So we see a sample here. Some of the higher scoring items in the survey include, I have opportunities to learn and grow at 86%. I have materials and equipment to do my job, 85%. I'm satisfied with my current job at 83%. So those three questions I just mentioned had on the higher end of the range of agreement rates. One caveat here reflected in the comments, I have materials and equipment to do my job. Some concerns shared by employees with disabilities expressed some concerns about the ability to access accommodations so they can best perform their jobs effectively. Moving on with the graph, my workload is manageable, I had 71% agreement. I have opportunities to advance, had 66% agreement, and I am compensated fairly at 64% agreement, and I am not frequently overwhelmed by work demands at 50% agreement. And of course, the complement to that last question, 50% did say that they were frequently overwhelmed by work demands. So some of those questions on the bottom half of that graph are some of the lower performing items in our survey. And those questions, opportunities to advance, receiving fair compensation, those have been low areas, low agreement rates in past iterations of the survey, so they remain areas to improve on, and they have been areas to improve on in previous iterations of the survey, and they remain so in 2025. Next slide, please. And of course, there are connections between all of these questions. They don't all live in a vacuum. All of these factors contribute to feelings and sentiments of burnout and contributing to turnover rates. So there were sentiments about heavy workloads. Workloads has been an area of concern in previous versions of the survey. And there are also concerns about receiving fair compensation for the work that employees do and opportunities or lack of opportunities to advance their position and overall contribute to feelings of not feeling valued as an employee at Multnomah County. Employees did express in the comments about wanting opportunities to advance, wanting to be promoted, but often mentioned that they didn't know where to pursue those options, how to receive training, where to pursue this training, or even knowing what to ask for to pursue opportunities to advance. And with factored into turnover rates, some employees felt in the comments that they were doing the work of multiple employees, 2 or more employees, and having that heavy workload and not feeling that they were compensated for the amount of work that they do, which again completes the cycle of not feeling valued and not feeling that they are being fairly compensated and leading, again, to some employee turnover. Next slide, please. Next, we'll move on to team level findings, and here we go over the team dynamics that employees share in the survey. Next slide, please. So overall, employees share that they do feel a sense of belonging on their team. Here we see a circle, a diagram. Employees felt that they belonged at the team level. They had a sense of belonging at their team. And further out we go from that circle, in the center of the circle, we have the department and the county. More than 80% agreed that they felt that they belonged to their team at 88%. But as we move further out from that circle at the department, at the county level, that 88% decreases as that circle gets wider and wider. But overall, coworkers shared that they felt a sense of belonging on the team and they felt valued by their team. Coworkers showed a general interest in me, 90% agreement rate. My coworkers value my skills, 93% agreement. And my supervisor values my skills, 89% agreement. Next slide, please. So the previous slide showed the overall countywide findings, but there are still some demographics, some groups in our workforce that don't have as strong as a sense of belonging as the general workforce. Here I show the work climate identity in this table. Work climate identity at the countywide level had an average of 3.43, but transgender employees had an average of 3.31. Queer employees had an average of 3.23. And employees with disabilities had an average of 3.33. All of these were statistically significantly lower than the countywide average. The belonging countywide average was 3.17. American Indian and Alaska Native employees had an average of 2.89. Employees with disabilities had an average of 3.07. Again, those two averages were statistically significantly lower than the countywide average. Next slide, please. Despite strong sense of belonging and strong sense of support from managers, there are still some opportunities from employees to feel supported by their supervisors and managers. One area shared in the comments revolves around being a new employee and being onboarded onto a job. Employees want to hit the ground running, of course. New employees want to excel in their positions, but there is often some concerns shared in the comments about not receiving sufficient onboarding training as a new employee. So a quote here shared by an employee in the survey: "With my hectic start, I still feel like I am learning things I should have known by this point." So this is an opportunity to improve training around new employees so they can be efficient members of their team. The graph on the right shows the percent agreement with "I received the right amount of information from my supervisor." So here, frontline staff had an agreement rate of 80%, but as move up to positions that are closer to leadership levels, frontline supervisor had 88% agreement, middle managers 87% agreement, and senior managers and executive members had 95% agreement. So frontline staff had significantly lower agreement rates to the question, I received the right amount of information from my supervisor, than employees at other levels. Next slide, please. And employees also express wanting to support their managers as well and being effective managers. The graph on the left shows the percent agreement to the question, I'm able to balance my work and personal obligations. Frontline staff at 82% agreement. Frontline supervisors, 72% agreement. Middle managers, 85% agreement. Senior managers and executive had 76% agreement. And that frontline supervisor, 72% agreement was statistically significantly lower to that question than employees at other levels. And employees wanted their managers to be effective managers, even though they felt supported by their managers, they had felt valued by their supervisors, they wanted their managers to be good managers and felt that managers had opportunities to receive better training to become better managers. Some of these opportunities include better understanding equity and bias, how to apply policies consistently to their team, and just overall general managerial skills and how to best be better, effective managers. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Kai to present further findings from the survey. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
I know, we've made it. Good afternoon. My name's Kai Rose. I use she, her pronouns. Next slide, please. So we're going to move on to the department and division level findings, and this is what staff are sharing for what they expect from their department leadership. Next slide, please. So similar to what folks are experiencing at that team level, they're looking to their department and division leadership to create those resources. So employees want the same experience regardless of what team or department they're in when it comes to policy application. They'd also like to see equal accountability for all staff, regardless of position or level, to ensure a consistent employee experience. So additionally, at this level, creating the resources needed for managers at that team level to be successful. Tying things back to workload, staff want to see leaders prioritize projects and also identify opportunities for projects that could be eliminated. Employees described how the challenge of having fewer resources with no relative decline to output expectations affects their own and also their team's stress, well-being, and morale. The quote that we provided to support this: "We are dealing with major workload issues. This job has become almost unmanageable, and I worry that clients' issues are falling through the cracks." No matter how many times we express this to management, absolutely nobody listens. Generally, staff are super, passionate about the job, but when workload levels are high, they really do worry about how this might affect the client's experience. Next slide. So there's two questions here. When changes are made, I understand why. So that's at that department division level, and also the county level. That's in orange. Department is in the lighter green there. Staff at higher levels, so speaking to the department division level first, at higher levels better understand the why. So we see department and county executives had 92% agreement, but as we go through the ladder there, we get to frontline staff and there's 60% agreement. Frontline workers are likely to feel that they are left in the dark. The frontline employees would benefit from knowing how their feedback is used and why it wasn't when announcing final decisions, as well as demonstrating understanding of how decisions will actually impact them. Staff are generally super excited to solve tough challenges and would like opportunities and dedicated spaces to provide suggestions and feedback. They're looking for leadership to move from simply asking for feedback and actually actively listening to staff expertise to shape departmental and division changes. As for the countywide level, so back to orange, you can see regardless of employee level, it's actually relatively flat. So even folks at department and county executive levels who are closer up and leaders themselves don't have a high % agreement to understanding when changes are made. So there's opportunity there to figure out how to communicate transparently so that there is understanding at all levels. And just to note, this has been consistently low, so between 53 and 55% agreement going back from 2019 to 2025. Next slide, please. All right, we're moving on to the county level findings. So we're learning from employees what they need from countywide leadership. Next slide, please. Generally, staff are excited about strategic efforts. They support them, but they are looking to hear how the actions and also get progresses and updates communicated back to them. So they do support them, but they want to know what's happening, if progress is being made. They also noted a gap in how countywide strategies and processes changes are shared. So going back to that communication, that they often feel disconnected when they aren't told the reasons behind decisions and they aren't given a chance to weigh in before a final call is made. We also saw at this level an acknowledgement of the executive level turnover that was happening, and that it can oftentimes make things feel unstable and can impact the progress on long-term efforts and implementation on strategic efforts. And then just relatedly, without consistent leadership to drive forward, it kind of feels that strategic initiatives can feel like they're all talk. This also was communicated as potentially hiring concerns as well from staff. Some of the questions that we've added for this, connect work to the mission and goals, 86% agreement. Employees feel like they can collaborate outside of their work unit, 73% agreement. Both of these measures are strategic plan measures. And then the final question, departments are aligned on shared goals, so that strategic element, 68% agreement, which does fall a little bit lower than some of the other questions. Next slide, please. So internal and external politics was generally a much bigger theme this year. We do not ask any survey questions about politics, therefore we saw this as an emerging qualitative trend. Staff generally spoke about the culture of the county and how communication, decision-making, and external events are affecting them. There's split feelings on addressing external events. Some would like to see the county say and do more. Others would like us to simply focus on core service delivery. There's mixed feelings about the impacts of communication too. Some really appreciate the transparency from leadership and the frequent communication. Some felt that the communication is biased and or not aligned between leaders. Additionally, internally, we saw some comments speak about the budget conversations last fiscal year. Some felt that the conversations overall could have been more compassionate, but understood that they were very difficult conversations and that the decision-making isn't any easier as well. But they often felt that their work or their contributions or their experience was being belittled, and that made them not feel valued. So the quote for that is, "County leadership and the Board of Commissioners make comments and decisions that make employees feel unappreciated, unwanted, and completely devalued." To go along with this, and also just to the budget conversations, staff also just want to feel like leaders and decision makers have all the information that they need to make these really hard decisions, and that they want to see leaders have that information so that they better understand how their decision is going to impact the community and also the county overall. They want you to have what you need, and also leaders to be successful. I'm going to pass it off to Samuel Ashby to talk about the actual action plan for how we're going to address the survey.
Next slide, please. And so I won't go over the details around the strategic plan structure. I'll just say that this is, again, as you well know, we have a set of focus areas, 6 of those. We have outcomes, indicators, measures, and strategies associated with them. Next slide, please. So there are 8 measures in the One County Strategic Plan that are directly tied to the countywide employee survey. They all show up in Focus Area 5, Improve Operational Excellence. So we'll talk about Outcome 1. Employees feel connected to the county's mission and are proud of providing quality services. And Outcome 2, a workplace culture that is equitable, responsive, accountable, and drives proactive continuous improvement. Next slide, please. Now, the measures that show up in Focus Area 5, Improving Operational Excellence, and Outcome 1 that are from the countywide employee survey. From Indicator 2, employee satisfaction with their work and role at the county, the measures are job satisfaction average, belonging average, work climate average, and percent of departments that create a plan to address employees' experiences, including qualitative results. And then from Indicator 3, internal communication and recognition, the measure is supervisor and communication average. Please note that all of these are disaggregated when available by demographics. Next slide, please. Now, going to Focus Area 5, Outcome 2, and Indicator 2, I want to share the following measures. Continuous learning and professional development opportunities. The measure is percentage of employees that report having an opportunity to learn and grow at work. And then from Indicator 3, cross-departmental collaboration and proactive sharing of best practices. The measures are percentage of employees who report that their departments are aligned on shared county goals, and then the percentage of employees who report that they have opportunities to collaborate with others outside of their work unit. Again, all of these are disaggregated when available by demographics. Next slide, please. So, how do we want to respond to this? Our plan is to align the countywide employee survey and response action plan with the strategic plan. We want to develop a set of countywide and departmental goals, We want to facilitate cross-departmental workshops to identify strategies to meet those goals, and then develop departmental action plans related to each departmental goal. We'll do this first by gathering input from staff via the Employee Survey Manager Guide. Now, this is a guide that's been put out by the ERU team to department directors. It helps guide managers to have conversations with their staff about survey results and provides an opportunity for teams to submit feedback about ideas for improvement towards those respective outcomes. In the past, the ERU team has used the manager guide as a communication tool, but as suggested by the survey advisory group, this year they'll be leveraging this as a way to start getting input directly from staff about possible ways to improve employees' experiences in certain areas, and again, as a way to brainstorm possible strategies that will be used to inform those work groups. Our plan is to have those conversations in July of the new fiscal year, and I'll share with you a timeline. Next slide, please. So here's the timeline that shows how the Countywide Employee Survey integrates with the strategic plan. The timeline at the bottom shows fiscal year quarters at the top and key dates and actions on the bottom. In collaboration with the Survey Advisory Group, the ERU collected data from October to November of 2025. They analyzed data and created reports from December 2025 to March 2026, and we are sharing those results today. This is the beginning of the conversation when everyone can get information and then can start thinking about strategies to address employee survey results. We'll start again by getting input from the staff via the manager's guide, which will inform our strategic planning workshops. I want to acknowledge that many of you wanted access to the report materials before today, and we understand that there is desire to see those results so that you can ask questions about them. I want to personally emphasize that today is when everyone in the organization, commissioners, department directors, as well as leadership, will be able to have access to the report materials and then can start the process of addressing the results that we're seeing. This kickoff, again, is exactly that, a beginning and not the journey with these survey results. The evaluation and research team will be available to answer any questions that you have about the survey results after today. Strategic plan workshops plan to start again after the budget is adopted in June and will most likely go through September. We aim to share those strategic plan measures and strategies in October of 2026. And with that, I will turn it over to Sharice. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sharice Morris. I am the CHRO for Multnomah County. I am so glad to be.
Is this your first time?
This is my first time.
Congratulations. We are so glad to have you here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I use she, her pronouns. So I'm really just here to share with you the HR perspective. And so historically, the survey has been the county's largest ongoing effort to gather information for employee experiences, guiding our work to ensure staff support. But moving beyond the anecdotal feedback, the results provide factual foundation for HR to identify exact impacts on staff membership's day-to-day work, such as job satisfaction, which we've mentioned, supervision quality, and manageable workloads, as we strive to be the employer of choice. For the 2025 results, our commitment is to use this information to inform and operationalize HR priorities. We'll concentrate our efforts on areas with lower staff ratings, developing specific action items to improve those experiences. These actions will not only allow HR support core work, but also will align with the county's strategic plan and workforce equity strategic plan. In particularly, we want to make sure that we will drive Focus Area 5 goals, particularly belonging and communication, the foundations for our cultural improvement, while simultaneously meeting the critical West benchmarks like improving the disability experience and retaining transgender and gender diverse staff. And with that, I will turn it over to Laura.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board. I'm Laura Shepard. I use she, her, aya pronouns, and I serve as the Chief Diversity and Equity Officer for Multnomah County, and it is a pleasure to appear before you today. As we've seen today, the countywide engagement survey provides us with tremendously valuable information about how our employees experience working for the county. But that feedback is not enough. We must take action on the results of this survey. Our ongoing work with the Workforce Equity Strategic Plan, or the WESP, is directly connected to the feedback we receive through the survey. And there's a direct connection and accountability between the WESP and the county strategic plan, and as my colleague Mr. Ashby pointed out, these measures from the survey are our priorities. We know that these issues matter to our employees. And so in sum, and I'm last on the agenda, I do want to emphasize that the work of the WESP is underway. Those basic tenets of safety, trust, and belonging are central to our work, and we will continue to use the feedback from the survey to inform us as we continue doing this vital work for the employees of Multnomah County. And with that, I think we're done and maybe have time for questions.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing all of the results, all the effort that goes into doing this, of course, all the employees who take the time to fill out this survey, but also like the connection to the work that we're doing with the strategic plan and the WESP in terms of how we're going to be taking action on the results that we've heard. You know, I think that there are key areas that we measure through the survey, including job satisfaction and supervision and communication, work climate, sense of belongings that have remained strong. And, you know, it's really important for us to hear those areas where we have to improve, or especially those groups among our employees are having a disparate experience there. And that's really where we need to focus our work and our action. And so I think the connections to our overall plan is important, and, you know, working directly with our department directors and county leadership in how we can make sure that the experience of our employees throughout the county meets the goals and the expectations that we all have. So just appreciate all of that. I will turn it over to the board for questions, and I'll start with Commissioner Brim Edwards.
Great. Thanks for the presentation, and I love how it was set up, where here's what we heard, and here's how it's going to be incorporated in the work plans, and thanks to all the employees who filled it out. I have just a couple questions, and they're somewhat related to just to operationalize what we heard back. On slide 22, there's this communication across the organizational levels, and showing kind of where, when there's shifts in countywide changes, there's, it looks like employees have less agency. So here's what my question is. It's a high-level question, so I'm not sure, you know, you're looking around like, who's going to answer this question? But the high-level question is, because it's, and then some of the other comments made about the commission and county leadership, how will county staff know that the commission, this was presented to the commission in a disaggregated way, like that we heard them? And then how will they know, because you had that timeline, but it was kind of a long lead time. How will they then know? Is this slide tells me that there's this sort of disconnect between, are those people at the top listening to us, or, you know, have they heard what we said about our work? And then so the question would be, how then will they know what the next steps are, and that the commission will be engaged, and that's integrated in our work in terms of monitoring the strategic plan?
I mean, I can take this one. So I'm sending out a countywide.
See, look, you didn't have to lift it behind you. She's right here.
I'm sending out a countywide email to all of our employees, actually, like right after this briefing gets done, so that they all are aware that the report is out, what's happened, that the board has been briefed on this, and then there'll also be additional communications and things like our Wednesday Wire and other county communications. I know that there's already been conversations with department leadership too about having those conversations with their employees too.
So then my other question also, this relates to, it's a little bit down into the, because I'm a disaggregated data person, and I'm wondering whether you disaggregated, or you have disaggregated information relating to, like at a positional level, and the sort of the thinking, my thinking is, so there's the, some of the data on sort of burnout and my job is unmanageable, or related to compensation. And I am curious if we have that sort of by position, because my assumption is that depending on where you are in the organization and what your job is, your answer may be very different. And so we wouldn't want to have necessarily a broad response to something that actually is a very targeted area. So I'm curious about how we sort of look at that. I mean, retention being a very specific one. So like, are we losing mainly frontline staff because their job is unmanageable? But retaining more managerial staff because it's on a more manageable level. So I'm just curious what data we have and how we target it.
Yeah, that's a great
response.
question. So we do collect information about employee level and employee type, not about their position per se. That gets a little bit too identifiable. But we do provide information about, and I think probably the closest to what you're looking for would be employee level. So frontline staff, frontline supervisors, middle managers, senior managers, and executive staff. And those results are in the report, and you can look at those. Just off the top of my head, I do recall that there are some differences with how employees feel about compensation, with the frontline staff having less satisfaction with, feeling less satisfaction with compensation than higher level staff.
Great, and I know we're already over time here today, so I'd love to just follow up, learn more about like how we specifically target that, because it seems like we might have some low-hanging fruit, how we address that. Thank you, and again, thanks to all the employees who answered it, and look forward to taking action to address some of the issues and concerns that were raised.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Samuel, and the rest of the team, Allison, everyone for the presentation and what you shared. I always live by the principle you can't fix a secret. So just to know, just what everyone's feeling, or at least 57% of the frontline, or 57% of the people that choose to work and serve our community of Multnomah County, this information is extremely helpful. I appreciate just how it weaves into our overall just strategy and strategic plan just moving forward. It's heard as far as like the communication and then the level of collaboration, so I appreciate what the chair has mentioned already. I'm looking forward to seeing the report at the end of the day, so I don't have any questions. I will have questions after we see the full report. So thank you for your efforts and just for your courage to come in and share the information this morning.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Moyer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody who participated in the survey work group. That was a lot of people, and I really appreciate when people add things to their workload that benefit the entire organization. So thank you, everybody who were willing to do that work. I'm very interested. I'm kind of a survey research nerd due to some of my former jobs I've had in my life. So I'm really interested in diving into some of the crosstabs and seeing a little bit deeper. I think I have a particular interest in the experience our employees are having who experience disability. I am one of those people who thinks that that is a workforce that I love to tap into, because so often they're passed up, and you can grab some fantastic employees if you have a really good accommodation system and a culture. And so I always look to how we can recruit more employees with disability and how we help people bring their best selves. So I'm wanting to dig into that. Of course, when it comes to responses on the county level, I'm interested in hearing that and taking that information in, and hopefully having that reflected in things that I work on to improve as a commissioner. What is the availability of the full report, and how will we interact with you to be able to get to dive deeper in some areas?
You will all have access to the report, including the ability to the dashboard, the Tableau dashboard, where you can go in and slice and dice the data in lots of different ways. It's lots of fun to play with today. You'll have that later on today. And we are always available to answer questions, so please reach out to us, eru@moltco.us.
I'd like to add, though, we have one-on-ones with each of you monthly. We'll use that opportunity to be able to field your questions, because we have opportunities to talk about the connection between the strategic plan as well as the overall results.
And then one of the areas that I'm really interested in, and I know, because thank you for the briefing that we got earlier, that was really helpful. One of the things that I was really interested in, and I know work is being done, but I'd love when that's thought through to hear back, was around how we better engage employees in their own career development plans and how we institutionalize that. I'm a huge believer that every single employee should see themselves growing here, and that we have mapped that out, and that's part of regular check-ins, is to see how that's going, and are we making the opportunities we need to make available in order to grow our employees. Because, you know, I love seeing somebody come in front of us who's been with the county for 20 years and now they're heading a department. I think that that's such a testament to how people can grow and take on new challenges and be such an incredible benefit. And not everything has to be promotion oriented. It can be a lot of different types of development, but I want to be a place where people feel like we're invested in them. And so I know work is happening on that. I've had some of those conversations, but I'm really interested when that's flushed out, how we're rolling that out and how we're doing that work. But this is really helpful. I appreciate that the county does this. I look forward to engaging deeper in it, and from the perspective of those issues that I think the county leadership as a whole has a role in. I'm really looking forward to digging in and seeing how we help address those. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for the work, and the pre-briefing was really helpful. I agree. You know, I'll have more questions once I can, everything. I was like, and what's the disaggregated data? So once I can actually get into that, I'll definitely want to talk more with you all. Just a couple of things I want to highlight, and answers aren't needed today, but I think, as I mentioned yesterday, I wanted to bring into this room, I think similarly to where Commissioner Brim Edwards was going, was I mentioned collecting income at some point. I know that the job kind of frontline staff, frontline supervisor categories exist, but I think we'd learn a lot more from knowing what people's actual income level is as far as their satisfaction with compensation. So that would be something I'd love to see. I'm interested in the demographics of the respondents and how it relates to the county staff demographics as a whole. Who isn't speaking here is just as important as who is speaking, and I'd love to, I don't know if we have that data, but that's something I'd love to understand. Not just their demographics, but also the frontline supervisor, kind of same categories. I think the one other thing I wanted to just make sure to bring in today is the quantitative data is great. It sounds like there was a lot of qualitative. We heard a little bit about some themes. I would love to know more about that qualitative data, what types of analysis we've done, kind of what are we hearing. And then finally, I will say, as you're developing the plans of how we're going to address some of the places that we have growth spaces, I want to understand how the staff who are impacted are being involved in creating the plan. I think what I hear a lot of is like, we put something forward and we're like, here's what we're going to do, now you react to it. And I'd love to see how we can get a little more ahead and say, how are you a part of co-creating what these next steps look like? So I'll stop there, and again, just want to appreciate all the work and all the people who took the time to respond to the survey. Also a bit of a data nerd, so I know 57% is actually a knocking it out of the park response rate. So I hope we keep pushing that up and up. Thank you.
And I will just say my thanks again for all the work that went into this. Just really appreciate the fact that we do this, that we are measuring these things long-term. I think suggestions on how we can get some more information or present the information in a way that's meaningful for us to be able to respond effectively to this. And really, the goal of this is to keep tabs on ourselves, to be accountable to what our employees are experiencing so we can work to make this a place where people do feel that they are valued, that they are respected, and that they are contributing in a way that is recognized. So thanks everyone so much for this. That concludes our board meeting today. Our next meeting will be on Thursday at 9:30 a.m. There being no further business, we are adjourned.